Hello, welcome to Exploring Sunday Scriptures. It is May the 28th, 2024. These are the scriptures we'll be hearing this Sunday. Scripture, I should say singular, this Sunday, the first Sunday in June, June the 2nd, 2024. It's a very short series that we're going to have for about 4 weeks here before we go into the summer. This summer, I'm again hoping to take scriptures or topics or other things that you might be chewing on or you'd like to hear sermons on and composing those into a series. So if you have those, please drop me an email or give me a call or whatever it might be so that I know as I begin to try to put that together. So I had a decision here following Trinity Sunday. Well, what did I want to do? Did I just simply want to continue with the lectionary, that 3-year cycle of scriptures, and to use those until starting the summer? Or did I want to do something else? And I've been thumbing through or reading intently a number of different books, trying to germinate some ideas. And some of those may turn into series at a later time. But I was really looking for something that was catching me where I was. So you might say I was looking for the Spirit to help me in my discernment to guide me forward. Where I landed was a book, and I feel like somebody gave this to me, but I'm not sure. It is this book, The Biggest Lie in the History of Christianity. And to be honest, this book is not very scholarly. It's not a book that I really would recommend that highly. I consider it pretty surface level, but there were some ideas in it that I guess helped me to kind of put together then a series. There's not a lot of scripture references in here, so even the scriptures that I have chosen don't align necessarily with the chapters in this book. So if you're looking to get the book to think, oh, this could help me in this series, I think you're going to be disappointed. All it did was germinate some ideas for me, but I wanted to at least illuminate for you where kind of those ideas started in the first place. And it's through this book, and so as I said, a very short or brief series of about 4 weeks. So these first 2 weeks that I've got planned so far both only have just a single scripture. So no 3 scriptures, but just a single scripture as the focus for the Sunday. I've said before, I'm just going to take a little brief time right now to remind you of thinking about the contextual realities really do help in the sense of understanding where the scripture sits itself, but our context. What's happening with us, what's happening in our world, what's happening in our lives. All of those things really frame our experience or our encounter with God's inspired word. And it can be really interesting to take some time, like pausing this video right now, getting out a piece of paper, and writing down all of the things that really kind of are influencing you right now that you're thinking about, that are weighing heavy on your heart or bringing you joy, or that you've just got back there somewhere in the back of your mind, like, oh yeah, I have a doctor's appointment on Tuesday. Sure hope everything goes well there. Or I don't know, it could be a myriad of things, let alone like our stage in life. So I have a daughter that's just about to enter high school. She's finishing her last year in middle school, 8th grade. That is the context of my life right now with the age of my daughter. And my parents are in their 70s, so it's a context of my life. Could be different for you. You could be an empty nester with kids that are grown and started in their professional lives. Or beyond that, or before that with young child at home or no child at all, or a myriad of other things. All of that kind of frames that context. And so I do think it important that we ponder that. Now this scripture itself, this single scripture that we have for this week, comes out of Matthew's gospel. And this is a moment in which pivotally sort of Jesus is beginning to look towards Jerusalem and what's going to happen at the close of his life. And his fame had spread quite a bit, and he's been with his followers, the disciples, for a while. And so he decides to have this interaction with them concerning identity. And that's really the core question that surrounds this Sunday. So I'll read the scripture and just illuminate some of the facets of the scripture itself. I don't want to give too much away with the direction of the sermon itself, but hopefully that'll give you a little exposure to the scripture, give you some critical things to kind of think about, and invite you to encounter the scripture, go back to it a couple more times before we worship together on this Sunday, June 2nd, a Communion Sunday. So this is Matthew 16, verses 13 through 26. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Well, some say John the Baptist, and others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" And Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. From that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering at the hands of the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "God forbid it, Lord. This must never happen to you." But he turned aside and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are a hindrance to me, for you're setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." Then Jesus told his disciples, "If any wish to come after me, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world but forfeit their life? Or what will they give in return for their life?" So this whole passage is really about identity, all the different pieces of it. And the first part of it, we have this interaction with Jesus and the disciples themselves. And this is Jesus saying, so there's lots of rumors swirling about concerning me. What are they saying in these rumors? In other words, who are people thinking that I am based on the miracles and everything else? Are they, who are they whispering that I am? And we have the disciples then respond kind of what they've heard. Well, we've heard that some people say that you're John the Baptist. So kind of another incarnation of John the Baptist. Or Elijah. Now Elijah was swept up to heaven, and there was a sense of a return of Elijah would precede the coming of the Messiah. And so some say Elijah is who Jesus is. And then others, a prophet. So somebody speaking on behalf of God. So an agent of God. I think that'd be a good way to think of a prophet, an agent of God. And so that's what the disciples are hearing. And so Jesus decides to kind of then take another step further and ask them, okay, that's what other people are saying. What do you say? And we only have Simon Peter speak up here as a spokesperson for everybody else, saying, "You're the Messiah, the Son of God." Now, what could motivate this? Being with him for the amount of time that they were could motivate them to have seen that there's so much more to Jesus than being an agent of God, a prophet of God. And having encountered some of them, John the Baptist in the wilderness, they know he's not John the Baptist, that he preaches different things. He does different things comparatively to John the Baptist, and even Elijah. And so we get to this place where they say the only way that you're able to do and say the things that you do and say must mean that you are the Messiah. And Jesus' answer is not so much an affirmation, but it is an affirmation. He doesn't say, "Hey, you're right." He just says, "Blessed are you." So this is sort of a sense of, that's so kind of you. That may not even be a great way to say it, but sort of, it's almost thankfulness, but it is an affirmation of sorts to Simon. And then a revelation to Simon for his identity. Simon, you are going to be this. Now, it's very interesting for Jesus to sort of see the true Peter that is there. This is his truth, his identity, which perhaps we know he will deny, but later will embrace and accept. And Jesus sees it now. And at the conclusion of this, he asks the disciples not to tell anybody. Now, this is always confusing to us when Jesus asks those who have been healed or the disciples, don't tell anybody what's gone on. Don't tell anybody what my identity is. And the reason is Jesus wants authentic faith to accompany people's revelation or experience, and not simply rumor to end up generating faith. So it's seeking authenticity in faith, and an authenticity into understanding identity. Then we have that pivot. From this time on, Jesus showed his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem, and kind of unfolds everything that's going to happen at the end of the story. And Peter, who just talked to and said, now you understand your true identity, this is what it's going to be, doesn't like what Jesus is saying. And so he says, you got to stop saying these things. It's really upsetting to us. And Jesus snaps at him. And his sense of get behind me is, don't tempt me away from my truth. This is my truth, not your truth. And don't tempt me away from declaring my truth and from living my truth. And so that's why we get behind me, is I don't want to be persuaded away from the path that I'm going. And it concludes with sort of a little sense of denial and acceptance. And this has to do with, I think, more concerning identity. As I said, this whole passage is really about identity. And I think looking at, if you come after me, deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. This isn't about becoming Jesus. This is becoming our authentic selves, the selves that God knows, and the selves that God knows that we are capable of being, which is living in a manner such as we see modeled in Jesus, if you will, who was a full embodiment of God. So this is aligning holiness, or living our truth in the holiness of our lives. That's what denying certain pieces are, letting loose of certain pieces is, and gaining others in return. So this is our only passage of this week, as I said, is this passage from Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 through 26. And entirely wrapped up with identity, and that's what we're really going to explore, is identity. Our identity, the identities the world gives us, the identity that God gives us, and living our true and authentic self. I've probably said more than I really intended to say about the general direction I'm headed. As I said, all loosely based on that book, but not something I necessarily would suggest picking up to help complement this, but just where the thoughts began and germinated. So I look forward to being with you for worship this Sunday as we come together, as we are drawn together, and we think about who we are and who our God is and whose we are. God bless you. See you soon.